Hi, I'm Jeremy, the Internet Scrum Master. I have over 20 years experience in tech and finance. I've worked across service desk, QA, server and application administration, release management, and I've been a full-time Scrum Master since 2016. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we're talking about user story mapping, a powerful tool and exercise you can use to develop your product backlog. User story maps can range from simple to complex with many levels. For simplicity, I'm keeping my user story map to 3 levels: personas, needs or features, and user stories. This video will end with me aligning user stories into releases and sprints. Today's example product is my YouTube channel. You can see the goal for my channel is to educate the Agile community in an easy to understand way and from a practical, real-world perspective. I wanted to avoid using software in my example just to make sure I don't inadvertently mention something I've worked on in the past. I hope you'll be able to see how this can easily be adapted to software development. Starting with personas, the first level of the map. A persona is a semi-fictionalized representation of an actual user. These can be internal or external to the organization. Today, these are the personas I've come up with: Agile Coach, Agile Organization, and Beginner Agilist. Each persona reflects a group I assume are interested in this kind of content. You can see on screen the goals and pain points for each of them. And this is probably the most basic form of persona that you could make. Some organizations create pages in Confluence for each persona, with each page resembling a social media profile with a lot of detail about who the persona, the person is, their goals, and their pain points. You'll have to figure out what level of detail is best for your organization. It's important to have well-developed personas because they will be used to identify our features and our user stories, eventually our deliverables. For today's example, just the minimum is fine. I'm going to move the animation along now. We'll keep the goals and the pain points in the back of the minds of our personas and create features that align to those goals and pain points. Each of the features are needs that our personas have, and they contain action verbs, something that they need to do. Right? The first feature for the Agile Coach is find novel ways to teach Agile concepts. Stories under this feature should help the Agile Coach find new ways to teach. That aligns with the pain point that organizations misunderstand Agile concepts. I won't read through each of the features, but you can see that they all have actions that align to either the goals or the pain points of the persona. One thing I will call out, though, is that those needs or features could apply to more than one persona. For example, under the Beginner Agilist is the action learn to apply concepts to real-world scenarios. That might also be something the Agile Coach would want. However, when it comes to making the video, writing the script, as a product owner, I want to make sure to tailor the script to someone new to Agile and Scrum, a beginner, someone with no base knowledge. Okay. If that same need or feature was mapped under the Agile Coach, I might tailor the script differently. I might assume a little more base knowledge and jump into the communicating it to a newbie kind of perspective. Regardless, multiple personas could find the video useful. This type of decision is one the product owner needs to consider when thinking about how people will use the product. And I'll talk more about that later. One final note on features. When overlap exists between personas and the functionality is exactly the same, then in that case, we should map the feature to the higher priority persona, which is simply the first persona we map, and it should be the most important to your product. So that way, when we get to those other personas, we can focus only on the features specific to them. In many cases, those other personas and those features specific to them will be lower priority features simply by function of prioritizing the higher persona first. However, that might not always be true. This mapping exercise, the user story mapping, is used to help discover work, and higher priority items might be discovered later in the mapping process. And that's where backlog prioritization and refinement come in. That's just much later in the process. All right, I'm going to fill in the user stories now. Each user story here aligns to the feature or need and the goal or pain point of the persona. When we create our work items using this mapping technique, we can be sure that all of the work items align to the needs of our customers, our personas, which demonstrate business value. When we eventually move these into a product backlog, we lose this tree view and the alignment. And that's why you hear so many people, so many Scrum Masters and coaches say to format user stories like so. As a user, I want something so that I get some benefit. In this way, the user is the persona. In this mapping technique, the user is the persona. The something they want is the thing in the user story, and the benefit is either the goal or the pain point that thing is addressing. Okay? So now I'm going to rewrite all the user stories in that format, and I'm going to remove the personas from the view because now they're redundant. When you look at user stories like this, it makes a lot of sense. I think what a lot of teams view in terms of that structure of a user story, as a user, I want something so I get some benefit, they see the user in that statement as the actual human that's requesting the item, and generally the human is the product owner that's writing that ticket. So the teams omit it because they think it's meaningless, and usually the JIRA field already has a requester, and that's automatically filled in by the person creating it. However, when we have defined personas and we show them as the user in the user story, it actually adds value to the developers and the entire team. Because when they go to implement a solution, they know how to tailor it appropriately. They know how to tailor it appropriately to the user in question. The next transformation on the animation moves the user stories into releases. And for this example, each release is a video on my channel. So for the first release, I'm focused on satisfying one user story for our beginner Agilist. Now, perhaps my presentation quality will be so great that the one video could also satisfy the user story for the Agile organization. It depends on how engaging I am, I suppose. But that isn't the focus of the video. The first video is tailored to that beginner Agilist and basic fundamentals. So that's what I focus on when writing the script. I'm going to skip release 2. So for release 3 and 4, I want to attempt to do videos that address a need for a coach and an Agile organization. In those videos, I can tailor my presentation to those personas. You might notice that one of the user stories, like wanting to post in the community tab on my channel, aren't part of a video. I would not incorporate that into a video except to announce that it's available on the channel. So enabling it itself isn't done by my definition because I've defined the release as a video. and I need to stay true to my definition. So in this case, the release will be done when I announce in the video that the community tab is available. So the main thing to take away from this is that when you have independent user stories in the backlog, you can mix and match them in a release to give multiple personas a little bit of functionality each time. Like putting together little Lego bricks, and over many iterations, it builds into something with a lot of value for each persona. So now we can take the user stories and move them into our product backlog, ordered such that the first item on top is the first one that needs to be done. I've kept the release labels and I've added sprints. You can see how release 3 will take 2 sprints, and this has to do with my capacity, how much work I can get done in a sprint. During sprint 3, I have other engagements and I can't spend very much time on my video. So I will enable the community tab. Anyone who stumbles on it can see it. However, since I haven't made the video announcing it, I don't consider the release complete. That's part of my definition of done for a release. All things must be done and announced in a video. So you can create your definition of done as you see fit that makes sense for your product and your goals. In software development, using continuous integration and continuous delivery models, each user story might be released as it's completed, removing the release as a separate thing altogether. For that to work, each user story must truly be independent of all others, which is harder to do in practice than you might think. And also often organizations want to schedule releases during maintenance windows. Grouping together multiple user stories can make more sense in those cases. Like support people can be on hand to ensure nothing unexpected comes up. But again, even in those cases, keeping independent user stories is important because you can, again, mix and match them. Maybe during that release process, one piece of functionality isn't working as expected, and that can be pulled out because it's independent of the others. Okay? That's it for today's video on user story mapping. In summary, we took a product, my YouTube channel, created personas reflecting likely viewers of my channel. We addressed the needs of the personas by creating features and user stories. We grouped them by release, and we broke the releases down to sprints based on my capacity. I hope you can see how powerful a tool this is to create a backlog that aligns to your customers' needs. Let me know in the comments if you've gone through this exercise, and if so, if you found it valuable. Also, let me know what other topics you want to see me cover. Until next time, take care.